Hey everybody, this is Repeat Ron, and today we're going to be doing another Killing Floor 2 list. Today we are going to be taking a look at the Sharpshooter because people have been asking me to do a Sharpshooter list. So, now that I've actually used all the Sharpshooter's weapons, I hadn't used the Cryo Bow all that much, but I've been using it quite frequently as of now to kind of get a better feel of it. I feel like now would be a good time to do it. So we're going to start out with their starting equipment and then just move down the line in tiers as well. In tiers of when you buy them. So the first weapon is the Kukuri, or Kukuri, however you want to say it. This is a really cool looking knife, but it's still a knife, and Sharpshooter doesn't get any bonuses with it, and it's definitely going to be the fallback when you either need to do a panic block from a flesh pound trying to kill you, or when you are completely out of ammo with everything. Arguably, it's a little bit worse on Sharpshooter than on other people because they do have a lot of cheap options that keep them in the fight for quite a while. So up next is 9mm. Now the 9mm I've been putting in C tier for almost everybody besides Commando, I believe. Commando I put it in B tier, and it's going to go into B tier for Sharpshooter as well because Sharpshooter does get bonus headshot damage. This can also trigger the Rack 'em Up skill. I would say it's B tier with Rack 'em Up. Without Rack 'em Up, I'd still say it's C tier. Although you do get the bonus headshot damage, but that's just the Sharpshooter passive. So Sharpshooter definitely makes the 9mm quite a bit better than it otherwise would be. So definitely B tier with Rack 'em Up, otherwise probably C tier without it. They can also Sharpshooter can also make use of dual 9mm pretty well too. I don't have them on this list or any other list, but I will have them when we rank all the weapons. So next we got the Freeze Grenade, and the Freeze Grenade is one of the best grenades in the game because you can potentially kill yourself with it, but it's 1 point. So if you do that, that's pretty spectacular, and apparently a couple people have told me that they've done that. I've never done that. I was actually under the impression for a while that this did no damage to you if you were close enough, but it can do at least 1 damage to you if you're pretty much standing on it. This does a very low amount of damage to all enemies, but it does freeze them, and freeze can apply to almost any enemy. The only ones it can't apply to are most of the bosses, with the exception being, I believe you can freeze Hans for a second, and you can freeze the Patriarch for a little bit. Freezing bosses will be lower than it would be if you froze like a Scrake or a Flesh Pound or something, and that's usually what you want to use these for. You can freeze a crowd of Zeds though to buy yourself some time, and it's not a bad option, so it's going to go right into A tier. It's quite good. Alright, and then for our final starting equipment, we've got the Winchester. Now the Winchester does 80 damage to start with, which is a lot of damage for an unupgraded weapon. It weighs 5, which is at a very nice weight. It has a 150 rate of fire. And with upgrades, it actually gets really strong. So when the Winchester's fully upgraded, it weighs 9, and it does 2.5 times more damage. So on the max upgrade for the Winchester, you're doing 200 damage a shot, which is a lot of damage. This gun actually scales incredibly well, and it definitely is one of the best starting weapons. You're never sad to see this just laying on the ground and pick it up. So I'm going to put the Winchester in A tier. It's actually really good. It's really good with both upgrades and without upgrades, especially at a weight of 5. A weight of 5 for 80 damage, that's pretty good. Alright, now unlike the other classes that we've taken a look at, Sharpshooter does have an additional Tier 1 weapon, and that is a single 1858 revolver. Now, a single 1858 revolver does 50 damage. It has a 300 rounds per minute rate of fire, which is pretty good. It actually scales very well with upgrades. First upgrade is only 15%, but then it scales up quite a bit more, up to 2.5 times, or 2.2 times bonus damage when it's maxed out. And it only weighs 2 pounds to begin with, and 4 pounds at max. That's still not that bad. It makes for a pretty good sidearm if you need a sidearm. It does have somewhat of a slow reload. You do only get 6 shots. Its sights are okay, but not the greatest. It's a pretty decent sidearm, especially if you can just pick it up off the ground. If you can pick it up off the ground, then you probably want to hang on to it for a little bit, because it makes for a good backup weapon. And it's not very expensive to buy ammo, I don't think. At least it never seems to be for me. So I'm going to take the 1858, and I'm also going to put it in B tier. It's pretty good. It makes a pretty good sidearm. It's not bad at all. Its weight is really good, and you can throw 2 upgrades into this weapon without adding any additional weight, which is great. Even when it's max upgrade, it's only 4 pounds, so it still fits into quite a few loadouts, or 4 weight, sorry. Alright, now we're going to move on to tier 2 weapons, and let's talk about the centerfire. Now, the centerfire does 165 damage per shot. It has the same rate of fire as the Winchester. It holds 2 less bullets in the chamber, and it holds less ammo overall than the Winchester. Other than that, it is just somewhat of an upgrade from the Winchester. It still does weigh 5, which is great. And it can be upgraded to a total weight of 8. So when the centerfire is fully upgraded, it does 239 damage per shot, which is a lot of damage too. I'm also going to put this one right next to the Winchester. These two are pretty much neck and neck in my book. The centerfire does do an additional 38 damage more than the Winchester when they're both fully upgraded. They both weigh almost the same weight, with the Winchester weighing just 1 more. For sights, I actually like the Winchester sights better than the centerfire sights, but centerfires are pretty good too. You do get a little bit more ammo with the Winchester though too, and 2 more bullets in the tube. Now how much that makes difference, I don't know, and I'm not sure exactly what thresholds that you kill certain Zeds at, if there's even a noticeable threshold between these two shot for shot performance. So both of them very strong options early on, and very strong options later on too, which is great. Alright, the next tier 2 weapon is the crossbow. And the crossbow is a very fun weapon. It's a very fun off-perk weapon as well. You get 1 shot in it. It does reload surprisingly fast. It does 350 damage on hit. It also can pierce through multiple targets up to 4. It has a 42 rounds per minute rate of fire, or at best with the faster reloads, 60 rounds per minute. So it's fairly slow on the rate of fire. It does do a lot of damage at 350, and you can pick up your crossbow bolts after you've used them, so long as they are still within the map where you can get them. It also has pretty good upgrades too. You can upgrade it 3 times, and then it goes from a weight of 6 up to a weight of 9, and it gets an additional 60% more damage. That is quite good. I think it goes up to something like 540-ish damage or something like that. Oh, 560. I was close. On guessing. It does actually pretty well. It also has a very high stun chance when you hit something in the head. If you hit a Scrake in the head with this, it's probably going to stun it. Probably not going to kill it unless you're playing on a lower difficulty, or it's fully upgraded on certain difficulties. It is pretty good for hitting multiple enemies. It's pretty good for a very economic weapon, and it's pretty decent overall. I don't think it's quite A tier though, but it is probably high B tier. Probably right about there. It's a pretty fun weapon. It's something I really enjoy using, but it does have some drawbacks to it as well. Alright, and our last tier 2 weapon that we're going to be taking a look at is the single Spitfire revolver. Now, the single Spitfire revolver does 40 damage, it weighs 2, it holds 6 shots. It also does damage over time because it does inflict fire damage, and it has a 300 round rate of fire, so pretty good. Same as the 1858, shoots just as fast. It does have pretty decent sights to it as well, and it actually has pretty good scaling as well, because at max it goes up by 75% more damage. So it actually does scale pretty well, and it does only weigh 2. At max it weighs 4, which still isn't that bad. That being said, it's definitely not one of the best weapons for Sharpshooter. It does have bullet drop-off as well, so it's more difficult to hit enemies at longer ranges with. It's not as easy to line up shots with. It does have a somewhat slow travel time as well when you see the bullets moving. It's really not the best weapon for Sharpshooter. I have done a challenge with this though, which was only using a single Spitfire to play 4 rounds Hell on Earth, and I did beat it, I think, first try when we did it, which was kind of surprising. So it's not a terrible weapon by any means. It's actually kind of fun to use because bonus fire damage does help you to some extent. You can start floor fires with this. Floor fires can kill crawlers, and they can kill stalkers, which are going to be 2 of your biggest issues as Sharpshooter. It can also deal bonus damage towards bloats. so you won't have to worry about a bloat. Although usually you don't have to with Sharpshooter, but you never know. So I'm going to put the single Spitfire in C tier. It's not bad, but it's not preferred on Sharpshooter. Alright, moving on to tier 3 weapons, and we're going to be starting out with the M14. Now, the M14 holds 20 rounds, it's semi-automatic, it has both an ACOG sight and a laser sight. The laser sight is actually really useful for newer players, because it really lets you get used to hip firing, especially at close range. It weighs 7, and it can be upgraded twice, with each upgrade increasing it by 15%. Its base damage is 80, so 15% isn't the best, but it's not bad at all either. It has the same base damage as the Winchester, but obviously 20 round magazine. That's a detachable magazine, so you can reload it much faster. It has a 272 round per minute rate of fire, which is not bad either. This weapon all around is just not that bad. It's not incredible by any means, in my opinion. It's very good at clearing off small and medium Zeds. It somewhat struggles against large Zeds unless you also run it with something like the crossbow that is good at killing them, or use your freeze grenade frequently. But I'm not the biggest fan of the M14. Overall though, I think it's still an okay gun. I would probably put it in B tier right next to the crossbow. Alright, next tier 3 weapon will be the Mosin Nagant. Now the Mosin weighs 7, which is the same as the M14. It has a 5 round magazine capacity. The Mosin does 250 damage per shot. It has a 7 round rate of fire, and the bayonet on it you can use to stab. The stab from the bayonet does 100 damage, and it has a 2.5 meter reach, which is one of the longest reaches out of any melee weapon. Now the Mosin can also parry on it. It can also block and parry, which is great. If you parry, then you receive 50% damage reduction, and if you block, then you receive 40% damage reduction from anything that you can block or parry. This gun also scales the same as the M14, at least in terms of percentages. So it scales 15% for each level, bringing it up to a total weight of 9. And the stab actually is increased by the upgrades as well, which is pretty good. The Mosin is actually really good right now, in my opinion. Being able to block is extremely good because you, as playing Sharpshooter, you are very squishy. You can't take too much of a hit, and blocking will help with that. The Mosin does have limited ammo, but the bayonet is more than strong enough at killing almost all trash Zeds, and it actually stabs pretty quickly, and it does a lot of damage. It does quite a bit of damage per shot. Its sights are pretty decent as well. It does have somewhat of a limited ammo pool though, so you could run yourself out of ammo and just be somewhat forced to stab. That being said, it's not bad. I'm going to put the Mosin at the top of A tier. I think that's where it is. I don't know if it's quite S tier. Alright, moving on to tier 4 weapons. We're going to start out with the 500, since this is going to be the first tier 4 that you can really afford. So the 500 will only cost you $750, which is nice. And you're getting a tier 4 weapon for that. It can upgrade once, and its upgrade gives it 15% more damage. It has a base damage of 160, so if it's upgraded, it's something like 185-ish. It has a 250 round rate of fire, so it is slower shooting than the other revolvers. It also only holds 5 shots instead of 6, and it does weigh more. It weighs 3 weight. If you upgrade though, that's 4 weight, so it does upgrade to the max amount of weight as these other pistols. The 500 also has a lot of penetrative power. It can shoot through a total of 3 enemies at once, which is pretty nice. It actually makes for quite a good backup, especially at 3 weight. You can put it on quite a few things. You don't even need to upgrade it because 160 damage is still usually more than enough to one-shot most small and medium Zeds as Sharpshooter. You can even kill large Zeds with it pretty easily. That's one of the things that Sharpshooter does well, and this one also does it quite well. It's overall just a very good sidearm for whatever your main weapon is, so I'm going to put this one in A tier. Alright, moving on to the Railgun. Now, the Railgun is an extremely powerful weapon. It's a single-shot rifle. It can shoot through a total of 10 enemies, I believe, or it has a penetrative power of 10, so max. It has a 560 damage when shooting with the regular mode. If you have the lock-on mode, then it does 280 damage. It does half as much damage if you're using lock-on mode as if you're not using it, so never use the lock-on mode, pretty much. It has a massive rate of fire of 30 rounds a minute, If you can reload, if you have the expert reading, though, if you have the expert reloading perk, then it goes up to 37 rounds a minute, which is still not very much at all. This also has a pretty high stagger chance, like most weapons that hit pretty hard, and you can upgrade this one once, and it actually scales pretty well with this upgrade. So it originally weighs 9, with one upgrade it goes up to 10, and it gets an additional 25% more damage, which is quite nice. This one is very strong. You can usually one-shot Strakes and Flesh Pounds with it. You can also use it with Rack 'em Up if you switch to it after using one of these other weapons. The 9mm pistol works quite well for that. You can also do it with either lever action guns. These revolvers work too, but usually 9mm helps you rack it up to 5 faster. And then I believe at that point, even on 6-man Hell on Earth, you can one-shot Flesh Pounds with it. It also hurts bosses pretty bad too. And this is going to be your heavy backup weapon, sort of. It probably won't be your main weapon to firing at regular Zeds. You're going to have something else for that. But it does its job very well at killing large Zeds. So for that alone, I'm going to put the Railgun in S tier. It's very strong and very useful for a lot of situations. Alright, moving to the FAL. Now the FAL counts as both a sharpshooter and a commando weapon. And for commando I put it in A tier, and it's quite good on commando. I actually think it's better on commando in more instances than it is on sharpshooter, simply because sharpshooter doesn't necessarily need power. But this does give you a high rate of fire weapon. So the FAL weighs 8. You can upgrade it once, taking it to 9, starting out at 70 damage and then going up to 80 damage, which is pretty nice. It has a 606 rounds per minute rate of fire in full auto, 270 in semi-auto. It does have the ACOG sight on it too, which gives you some range to it, which is kind of nice. It holds 20 rounds in it, which is also kind of nice, and you can reload it somewhat fast. A somewhat decent downside to this, though, is that it does have a good amount of recoil when firing at full auto. So you do have to keep that in mind, but overall it's still a pretty good gun. I think it's pretty much above the M14 in almost everything that it does. I would say having the option to go from semi-auto to full auto is better than just semi-auto. The laser sight is nice for newer players, but once you get used to firing from the hip, the FAL will help you out a bit more. So it's going to go in the bottom of A tier. Alright, and then our last tier 4 weapon, we've got the cryo bow, or the compound bow. Compound bow can shoot cryo arrows. Now, it loads one shot at a time, just like the crossbow. It does a total of 250 damage with the regular arrows. So the regular arrows can go through up to 5 targets at once. They do 250 damage. Now the cryo arrow does 50 damage on impact and can pierce through multiple enemies. I don't think it's as many as the regular arrow. The cryo arrow also does 25 damage of freezing. And once the cryo arrow explodes upon hitting a frozen target, it can do an additional 200 damage, which is quite a bit. And freezing things is always kind of nice. This thing, as I've noticed though, it does have a somewhat strange hip fire because it feels a little bit off to the right, a little bit from other weapons. You do have to get used to that, but once you get used to it, it's not that bad. You can also pick up arrows from this, just like you can from the crossbow. I believe you can also pick up frozen arrows as long as they've hit the ground or a wall behind something, and then reuse them, which is always nice. This one is very nice. It does just it feels very similar to the crossbow. I said this was a tier 4 weapon. This is actually a tier 5 weapon. It's just cheaper than most tier 5 weapons. I thought it was a tier 4 weapon, but it cannot upgrade. You can also stab with the spike on it as well. The spike does 100 damage. There's nothing on the site that tells me exactly how long its reach is. It doesn't feel as long as, well, obviously the Mosin with the bayonet on it, but it still does feel somewhat short compared to other weapons. I'm going to put the cryo bow, or the compound bow, right next to the crossbow. I don't think it's quite A tier. It's still strong, it still works, it's still somewhat cost efficient as well, because you can get it. I don't think it's as cost efficient as the crossbow, just because you can get the crossbow earlier, and the crossbow does actually ramp up to more damage than this thing. But this thing is pretty nice as well, so I think B tier is where it's going to go. Alright, and then our final sharpshooter weapon is the M99 anti-material rifle. the big old 50 cal. Now, the big old 50 cal holds 1 bullet. It holds 20 extra bullets, so you don't get very many ammo, or you don't get very much ammo with this gun. It does a massive 850 damage a shot, which is a lot. It has a very sluggish rate of fire of 22 rounds per minute, or if you have fast reloads, 27 rounds a minute, so still very sluggish. It has a penetrative powder of 5, so you can punch through, I believe, 5 enemies with it. So about half as many as the Railgun. This weapon also cannot be upgraded, and it weighs a total of 12. Now, with that total weight of 12, that limits you heavily in what you can take. That means that you're going to be taking either one of the revolvers or dual 9mm. That's really your only options. If you're taking dual 9mm, then you're probably also going to go with a medic pistol. You could potentially go with a medic pistol with these 2 revolvers as well. Now, that very much limits you. The best thing to go with this one is usually the 500 Magnum, because you can still body shot small stuff with it and then switch to the 50 cal. The 50 cal I find to be really clumsy, in my opinion. The ACOG is fine. Firing it at big things works perfectly. It works pretty well, especially in boss wave, but that's really the only time I ever use this weapon, is when I take it to boss wave. Or when I'm playing it on, or when I'm using it with survivalist. It honestly makes a much better survivalist weapon, because then you actually have other options you can take. I don't think it's as good with Sharpshooter. So in terms of damage, it would definitely be an S tier in how much you can do, but in terms of actual use, I'd probably put it in probably B tier. I don't find it super appealing a lot of times. It's super fun to use, but most of the time I just don't use it. It's not that great on Sharpshooter, in my opinion. Huge damage is cool. You can kill flesh pounds and strikes with it, no problem. But the Railgun can do that, and the Railgun can actually, you can put something like the Winchester or the Centerfire with you. So you have another backup that also does a good job at clearing everything. So yeah, the list came out kind of interesting here for Sharpshooter. I'm not sure if I would want to move anything around. Alright, so this was my Sharpshooter tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Tell me what tier list you would like to see next. We still have Gunslinger, Survivalist, and SWAT. I'm going to do Survivalist last, so I guess you have to pick between Gunslinger and SWAT, unless you want to see another tier list like Grenades or Knives or something like that. I plan on doing all of those, and these have been a ton of fun to make. You guys really seem to be enjoying them. So thanks everybody for watching. I really do appreciate it. So thanks everybody, and if you would like to support the channel further, you can do so over at my Patreon for just $1 a month. You get access to early videos, as well as if you would like to support by buying merch, you can over at my merch store. Link is down in the description below. Use promo code REPY and get 10% off your total order. We have new Christmas stuff. Be sure to get that before the holidays, and I will talk to all of you guys next time. Till then, stay cool, and bye!